I don't play real-time strategy games very often. For one, I'm a controller player first and foremost, so I'm not well versed in mouse and keyboard controls. And for two, if that's even a grammatically correct phrase, needing to micromanage all of your units in combination with memorizing hotkeys and the muscle memory associated with that, along with keeping the specific games mechanics in mind, along with the strengths and weaknesses for each unit and more, it seems like hell to have to manage all of that. And yet, I have played a couple of real-time strategy games before, namely Halo Wars 1 and 2, and I've been dipping my beans into the mouse and keyboard waters with the recently released Broken Arrow. In fact, the reason I'm making this video is because I'm finally stepping out of my comfort zone when it comes to RTS games with that last one I listed. While a video dedicated to this game will have to be for another time, to give a quick summary here, Broken Arrow is fun yet challenging. I was drawn into it with the deck building, along with the fact this RTS game is set during modern day as opposed to something like World War II or the 80s with a traditional Cold War gone hot type scenario. Like I said, a video dedicated to this game will have to be for another time. I actually have to get good at it first. The game that I want to focus on for today's video though is an older RTS game. One that's pretty divisive amongst RTS players and one that you may not have heard of before, but it's an RTS game that is near and dear to my heart. It's the first game in this genre that I really mastered and therefore opened the door to me experiencing other games like it later down the road, as few in number as they've been. Welcome to Tom Clancy's Endwar. Released in 2008 for the Xbox 360 and PS3, along with spin-off versions for the PSP and DS, and a 2009 release for PC, Endwar takes place in a world where large-scale nuclear warfare is no longer possible. Earth is surrounded by an array of anti-ICBM laser satellites developed jointly between the United States of America and the European Federation, which is essentially the United States of Europe. However, with mutually assured destruction no longer being a viable threat, this means that conventional warfare is back on the menu, and after the world is plunged into a resource crisis, this drives the remaining three superpowers of the world to fight one another in a non-nuclear World War III. When you begin a new World War III campaign, you get to choose your faction for the war, the aforementioned United States and European Federation, along with Russia. Each country has their own tip-of-the-spear military force that you take control of in battle, the Joint Strike Force for the US, the Enforcer Corps for Europe, and the Spetsnaz Guard Brigade for Russia. After you pick your battalion, which is a small bonus that one of your units gets, and potentially a small penalty too, you're presented with the world map. Your goal is to conquer the world. While you don't have to take over every single piece of territory you see on the globe here, you do have to conquer the majority of them. Or you can be in possession of all three capitals to win, those being Washington, Paris, and Moscow. You'll be presented with a number of different battles that you can choose for your turn. You can choose to defend a piece of your land that's being threatened, or go after an enemy's piece of land. Depending on what kind of battle it is, you'll be presented with various conditions that have to be met in order to win, but we'll get to those later. For now, let's focus on the different units at your disposal. In Endwar, there are 7 units that you have direct control over, along with a few mission supports you can call in. You've got Riflemen, your boots on the ground units that excel at fighting against infantry, but need to be in cover in order to not get eviscerated out in the open. Engineers are able to take on enemy vehicles, but like with Riflemen, they need to be in cover. Transports take on the anti-air role, along with being able to, as their name implies, transport infantry across the battlefield. Tanks have long, thick, girthy cannons that can wipe the floor with infantry out in the open, as well as light armor. Artillery units are able to offer much needed long-range support, gunships serve the anti-tank and recon roles, and command vehicles offer various intel-based benefits that can boost the effectiveness of your units on the front lines. You also have access to airstrikes, electronic warfare in the form of small EMP bursts that can temporarily disable enemy vehicles, and regular military forces with force recon. So you've got your premise, you've got your territories, and you've got your units. Sounds like a pretty typical real-time strategy game so far, right? Well, once you get into the minute-to-minute gameplay, this is when things become very different from a typical game from this genre. And for as much as I like this game, because of how it handles combat, I have to admit that I can totally understand why more seasoned RTS players may be turned away from this game. I also have to give credit to Scav Merchant Hub's video on Endwar for pointing this out, since I wasn't made aware of this until I watched their video. Rather than your typical, your unit shoots at an enemy and as soon as the projectile hits it deals damage approach, Endwar's combat is timer-based. What do I mean by this? Your units will still fire shots at enemies, and you'll see things like missiles from helicopters and shells from tanks hit their targets, but those hits you see aren't actually dealing any damage. When 2 units are engaged in a fight, the game first takes a look at the types of units that are involved. In Endwar, each of the units have ones that they excel at going up against, and ones that'll tear them to shreds. Gunships are great against tanks and artillery, but will get chewed up and spat out by transports and engineers in cover. Tanks are perfect for using their massive, long, mighty cannons to blow their loads onto transports and infantry out in the open, but they'll get eviscerated by gunships. You get the idea. And then you have some middle ground cases where rather than one unit fully decimating the other, both units take damage from each other at a fair rate. So to tank units, to rifleman units while both of them are in cover, etc. The game first takes a look at that, and then depending on what the matchup is like, both units are dealt damage in different intervals. So to give an example, whenever a tank unit is being shot at by some gunships, the tank unit will take a chunk of damage every 2 to 4 seconds. Meanwhile, the gunship will take a chunk of damage every 20 to 25 seconds. And this is made even more complicated with the fact that every main unit has a shield that needs to be cleared first before any actual damage is dealt. This interval timer can fluctuate between different numbers depending on a variety of factors. Whether an infantry unit is in or out of cover, what kind of attack and defense upgrades both units have, things like that. There are special cases though where certain attacks, namely secondary attacks from units and airstrikes, will be projectile or hit scan based instead of timer based. Quite the contrast from your usual RTS combat, right? Personally, I'm cool with it. I'm not hyped up to hell and back thinking it should be the new gold standard for RTS games moving forward, but I'm not actively against it either. Like I said earlier though, I can totally see how some people may not be big on this style of combat. So if this was enough to deter you from checking out the game further, that's very fair. But wait. I know you're ready to click off the video since the game isn't interesting to you anymore, but just wait, hold on. If you stick around to the end, I'll make it worth your while. I'll femboy myself. How about that? Sounds good? Alright, sounds good. As hinted at earlier, you can upgrade your units with the credits you earn in battles. You have 4 different kinds of upgrades: attack, defense, mobility, and ability, which do as they say on the box. More powerful base attacks and secondary abilities, better protection against enemy attacks, faster speed, and different abilities such as stealth for riflemen, recon drones for command vehicles, etc. And you'll need these upgrades in order to stand a chance as you progress through the war, where you'll most likely run into all 4 of the different types of battles possible: Conquest, Assault, Raid, and Siege. Conquest is your typical capture the majority of the points type mode. However, these points can only be captured and upgraded by infantry. Riflemen or engineers will need to make their way inside and capture it, at which point it can also be upgraded to support one of the 3 available mission supports outlined earlier. Assault is your deathmatch mode. Drain the enemy drive reinforcements and you'll win. Raids take place at air and army bases, which house airstrikes and force recon respectively. Airstrikes and force recon work by having an adjacent air or army base nearby to a piece of land that you're fighting over. Or if the battle takes place on the army or air base itself, then whoever is defending will have that support available to them by default. If the attacker is successful in their raid, while the territory itself will still be in the defender's hands, any air support or regular army units from that particular base will be unavailable for a few turns while said army or air base is under repairs. And lastly, Siege, which is exclusive to Washington, Paris, and Moscow. When trying to take over an enemy's capital, you do so in 3 stages: 1 conquest battle, 1 assault battle, and then the siege. The attacker is tasked with taking over the critical uplink Alpha before time runs out. During this time, the defender can't call in additional reinforcements. If the timer runs out though, the defender will be allowed to call in reinforcements again, and a massive wave of force recon units will swarm in and deploy to further fortify the capital. And once the war is over, you start right back at square one with a new save, with all the territories and units reset to their default state. This encourages you to start another campaign with a new faction, or even with the same faction, since it's entirely possible the battles presented to you could be different this time around. For anyone looking for some PvP action, unfortunately, that's been dead for quite some time. Theater of War used to be where you would go to battle against other players, with the same goal of conquering the planet. But rather than territories being taken over within the span of a single battle, it would take multiple hours for the current turn to be complete, as players would fight one another on the different available spots to attack and defend. And then depending on the ratio of victories that each faction has for a particular spot, whoever won the most battles would be the new owners of that land when the next turn began. Something that I wanted to bring up but didn't have a good point in the video to do so until now is how this game was built for consoles first. Yeah, no shit, Thunderous, you showed us the release dates at the beginning of the video, I hear some of you saying, but I think that point is worth focusing on for a little bit. The vast majority of RTS games are on PC, and for good reason. You have a lot more flexibility when it comes to mapping controls to all the keys that a keyboard has, plus the mouse. Meanwhile, the controller doesn't have nearly as many buttons that can be used. While Endwar was cooking in the oven, the devs had to keep the Xbox 360 and PS3 3 controllers in mind. To put into perspective how many inputs are in your typical RTS game, let's briefly go back to Broken Arrow. Picture this, you've got a big group of ground targets that are just begging to be blown to pieces. Luckily, you have the perfect vehicle to fulfill their request, an F-15E Strike Eagle equipped with cluster bombs. So, you call in the Strike Eagle, hit V to have the pilot fly at low altitude to avoid long-range anti-air, L to enter bombing run mode, left click and drag across where you want the cluster bombs to be dropped, hit Z to have the pilot hit their afterburners to get there faster, hit Z again to have the pilot stop using the afterburners once they're close so they can position themselves better, you watch the fireworks,
Eagle here. Strike complete.
Triple kill.
and then you hit B to have the Strike Eagle return to base.
Eagle ready.
All while using WASD and the mouse scroll wheel to move and adjust the camera. There is no way you'd be able to do all of that micromanaging on a controller. Not well, at least. Because of that, the way that combat is done in Endwar has to be fundamentally different. Your camera will always be tied to the units that you have deployed. In combination with that, this is where one of Endwar's most touted features enters the picture: voice commands. To compensate for console players not having as much flexibility, the developers introduced a system where you can give orders through your headset mic. It's not freeform, unfortunately. You do need to follow a specific formula when speaking, but it works surprisingly well. As someone who played the Xbox 360 version of this game a ton back then, I can confirm that the voice command system can be a big help. Having to select the unit that you want to swap to, then moving the camera to where you want the unit to go, then hitting the button to confirm that order is much more tedious than just saying Unit 2, secure Alpha, or whatever. While the core gameplay loop is still the same on PC, here you have the benefit of being able to use your mouse and keyboard to issue orders. Therefore, the voice command system is a bit redundant here. If you have the right muscle memory down, you can often issue orders through mouse clicks and hotkeys faster than through voice commands. And that's Endwar. Definitely a bit of an oddball RTS game, but it's an oddball RTS game that I love. If you want to check it out, I would recommend the PC version. Thankfully, it runs pretty cheap on Steam nowadays. Despite there being no multiplayer to speak of anymore, the single player content is, in my eyes, more than enough to justify the price. Again, this game isn't going to be for everyone, but if this game does pique your interest, then I would say give it a shot. And for anyone who wasn't too keen on this game but stuck through to the end of the video, first of all, thank you. And thank you to everyone who watched until the end of the video for that matter. And second of all, I haven't forgotten about the promise I made. Here we go! Hey, yo, I like this look. Kinda has me acting up a little, I'm not gonna lie. Imagine you're a frontline soldier in this non-nuclear World War III and your commander is a twink femboy anthro wolf fox hybrid with his footpaws kicked up on his desk as he watches the carnage from a distance. Here's the thing though, if I knew my commander was a twink femboy fulf, that would be a boost to my morale. Anyway, I'm getting off topic and I gotta end this video before I ramble about something else entirely. Stay safe, stay healthy, and peace out.